So, the goal here today is to educate you on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the supply and demand of energy in the Chinese marketplace. These strengths come from many areas, such as production capabilities, diplomatic partnerships. There are weaknesses coming from certain lacks of technology, unstable alliances, and stricter regulations in China. There are many opportunities, primarily in the renewable sector, which China thrives in, and threats that can derail an operation, such as foreign competition, outdated equipment, and environmental limitations. So, in strengths of policy, they're adding a lot of new policy to try to have their markets bloom, such as adjusting pricing, tightening standards, redoing building codes so we can get that into the modern age and help emissions and things of that nature. And they're really trying to grow their domestic suppliers. So try to limit importing and try to kind of limit the powers of those major Chinese oil companies that dominate their marketplace. So a big strength China has is internationally, as they're Africa's biggest trading partner, and they're forming many coalitions and cooperations with other nations, especially in the Middle East and in Africa. So they have to visit these countries. So Xi Jinping has been the most traveled Chinese leader since about 1949, as he wants to strengthen any alliances he can. So they're a massive country, so their production is a major strength. They have a lot of land and they have a lot of assets that they can do. They have also invested extremely heavily, surpassing the United States, showing that they want to be the best and brightest in the energy marketplace. And they have the position to do it. They just need to shift away from coal and kind of get better technology so they can really develop their unconventional wells as well as conventional. So they also have many weaknesses, and one of the biggest of them is the lack of technology. They just their technology faces a major crisis as far as innovation goes. They're combating that across the country, not just in the oil sector, by adding a lot of subsidies in universities and such to try to get more investment in intelligence kind of things and everything else. It also hurts them just the rising costs of everything. And these lack of technology hurt not only their production capabilities and supply and transport and everything else, but it also hurts the environment as outdated equipment has higher emissions and everything else. They have a lot of weaknesses internationally, mainly just because they don't have to go by the UN standards, so they can do trade with countries that most Western countries don't. But these things are bad because not only do the UN won't help them either, so things like piracy and other things they're on their own. That's why they establish a lot of other partnerships and alliances. So their demand is also a major issue, as they're a massive country and their demand is growing exponentially due to the industrialization of China, or expanded industrialization rather. So it's hurting them because they just can't keep up and they have to import and they just can't match their demand. So their policy, one of their biggest ones is, since they're an authoritarian state, they have extremely tight regulations, so able it doesn't help establish a more competitive marketplace when all the pricing's set based on what the government thinks. And that, paired with the fact that China's policy only helps the major national oil companies of China, it hurts it even more because there's no smaller companies that could come out and have like kind of break out and be competitive in that marketplace. They're just fighting for scraps. So the biggest opportunity China has is renewable resources. They're currently the world leader in many types of renewable resources. However, that's still a really small thing. But their investment and their labor force has been going to try to expand that renewable resources that will be the future of energy, as well as that helps with carbon emissions and everything else. So they're very optimistic in their partnerships as well, trying to find military partners, cultural partners, and everything else, just to establish more like available trade and everything else and help with problems that they're facing. The competition is a major threat to the Chinese marketplace as they have to compete with Western powerhouses like the United States, who can hit them with sanctions, blockades, naval wise. But it's just them kind of playing catch up as far as technology with Western countries. But they're getting better with the industrialization. But if they don't find a way to kind of overcome staying behind in the international marketplace, it'll be a little tougher. So another thing that hurts them as far as getting help ahead in the competition is just equipment's expensive. They don't have the money to pay for it, and they don't have the technology to develop new technology themselves, rather. But they are very hard fought to lower their emissions and get that equipment that would help with that. And the last threat, as I was saying, is just demand. There's just too much demand, and the companies aren't producing enough. They can't tap into the unconventional wells. There's a lot of geographical issues, economic issues, logistics issues, but those are kind of the biggest issues. But China's strengths in policy and production, I think, outweigh these threats. And as they're a growing country, they'll stay atop the energy markets, and eventually they might be able to reach the levels of their Western counterparts.